Hello and welcome back to my shop. Have you ever thought about making your own sharpening stones from stones that you find out in the wilderness? Well, today I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you can do that. The first and easiest way is if you can find sandstone. Sandstone is relatively soft and it's easy to work compared to most stones. So here I'm just marking out a line, and when you're working with stone, especially grinding it with an abrasive wheel or anything like that, you really need to wear a respirator and use eye protection. There is going to be a lot of dust and particulates in the air, very fine particulates, and you're going to need a respirator for sure. Now what I'm going to use to cut this sandstone is a diamond embedded wheel that attaches to an angle grinder. These are meant for cutting tile, for like ceramic tile in your bathroom or kitchen, and they make quick work of sandstone. Sandstone cuts really easily with this type of a wheel. So just go back and forth until you finally cut through the sandstone there. And then this is a fairly large piece of sandstone, so I'm going to measure out about a 6-inch piece here and cut it down to 6 inches because I just think that would be a good size for a sharpening stone. You can see all the fine dust in the air, and if you breathe that in, that's going to wreak havoc on your lungs. Not going to be good for your health. A dust mask will not be sufficient. You really need to have a respirator when you do this. Now sandstone is soft enough that you can just take two pieces and rub them together to get them flat. So add a bit of water and it really helps lubricate things and get things going here. And just rub them on top of each other. And within a few minutes you'll have a really flat surface. This process is really messy wherever you do it. You can see my workbench is getting covered in dust and soaked. But within a couple of minutes we're already flat. And then you can actually take your sandstone over to a belt grinder if you have one and see how that other side of there is rough. I'm just going to flatten it off on the belt grinder here. Sandstone is very soft and many ways that you can work it. Just breaking the corners here. I don't want any sharp corners on this sharpening stone. Sharp corners will chip and also gouge into your knife when you're trying to sharpen it, so I'm just taking off all the sharp corners there, making everything nice and rounded over. And then for a second type of sharpening stone, you can take a piece of granite or other harder stone that is a lot harder to work. And the way we're going to do that is, similarly, we're going to use that same diamond cutting wheel. And it's just going to take a while longer to cut through it. So I'm clamping it up in the vise here because this piece is smaller, and that's just what you need to do to work that. And don't cut all the way through. If you do that while it's clamped in the vise, you're going to have problems with kickback and you could hurt yourself with that angle grinder. So change the position here and cut down that way so that you can get through the rest of the stone. Flip it over so you can cut the other side. And this is where you need to be careful when you finally cut through the final portion of the stone. You can see here that I got a little sloppy and made a mistake right about here. That's dangerous. Try to avoid that. But you can see I didn't cut it super straight, so we're going to have to work with that. There's some deeper portions there. So what I'm doing here is just flattening off, and you can see I nicked my finger there. It doesn't cut. The diamond abrasive is not sharp enough to cut your skin, but it will give you a little bit of an abrasion. So just be careful. This is probably not what you should do. Don't hold it in your hand like that. Put it back in the vise when you're flattening off the edges there. There you can see what it did to my fingertip. Not too bad, but still you don't want to do that. Try to avoid it. So clamp it up in your vise here, now that you've flattened off either side, and it's not going to rock and it's going to be safe to grind on again. So I'm just taking the grinder over the surface of it and I'm trying to get it as flat as I can. And it takes a little while of going back and forth and just checking as you go, but just get the high portions and try to get down to your lowest point and flatten it off. Now you're not going to be able to get it perfectly flat with your angle grinder, so what I use here is a diamond plate. I actually got this from Harbor Freight a few years ago, and it came in a set of 3, and it's just meant to be a knife sharpener, but it's really not great for a knife sharpener because it's so thin, and it's really hard to hold on to being that thin. The one that Harbor Freight now sells comes in like a square block with different grits on each side, and that one's better. And if you do end up using a diamond plate to flatten off your stone, you'll probably either get the one from Harbor Freight, or if you look online, I think they sell them on Amazon. But I've heard mixed reviews on the ones on Amazon that the diamonds are not embedded in the plate very well and they come off really easily. So try to avoid that. Make sure you look up reviews and get a high quality one, but also a cheap one because it will get dull using it on stone. Now here you can see grinding the stone. It gets loaded up in the diamond plate, so I just take an old kitchen brush and clear out the loading there. And it's just, maybe about 15 or 20 minutes with this diamond plate spent on flattening out this stone. So it's a bit of a tedious process, but nothing that's too hard or not doable. So when you think you're just about flat, take a big black marker, if you have one, and color the whole surface of the stone. And then when you go back and grind on it again, any low spots will still be black and you'll know you need to grind further. And if you grind and all the black is ground away, then you know that you're perfectly flat and you can check it with a straight edge. But here you can see no more black. So I take it over to the workbench and I'm using the diamond plate to break the corners of the stone. Again, I don't want any sharp corners on this stone, same as the other stone. And so we're looking pretty good here. I just take it over and do a few more final passes to make sure I have a smooth surface there. And you can see we are dead flat. So let's test this out on a knife here. I'm going to take one of my knives and sufficiently dull the edge to where it won't slice paper. So take it on one of the rocks and just dull the heck out of it. Take it over the other sandstone and continue to dull it. And believe me, this is thoroughly dull. It takes a while for me to sharpen this back. You can see it's not even, I'm not scared to cut myself at all, and it will not cut paper. It just tears a little bit but won't even bite the paper. So this takes a while here, but I am going to sharpen it back using these stones, and I'll speed up the process here. I'm going to do it all in one take and not any cuts, just to make sure that there's no tomfoolery going on, and you can know that I didn't take it over to my belt sander or anything and just put a quick edge on it. I actually sat here for a few minutes and sharpened it on the sandstone. A lot of back and forth, and you can see the gray slurry that builds up on the surface of the stone. That's actually the steel being removed and the buildup of steel particles on the surface there. So you just wash that off every once in a while. So then I hone it with the granite stone or the harder, finer stone. And then I test for sharpness with my finger believe that it needs a little more, so I keep honing on the fine stone. It feels pretty sharp, but when I try to shave hairs, it's not hair shaving sharp yet. So I tested on some paper, and it slices through the paper pretty well. Especially when you go fast, it slices really well. And I thought I hit record, but I didn't, as I went and honed it further with the fine stone, and I actually got it up to hair shaving sharp. So what do you think? Do you think this is a project worth doing? I don't know if you want to do this for all your sharpening stones, to go find stones in the wild and go craft them into sharpening stones. But I do think it's cool to be able to say you made something and you use it. To take something from nature and make it into something useful is super fun and cool. I think this project is more for the sake of doing it, to be able to say you did it. With the price of sharpening stones and good quality sharpening stones that you can get online, I don't think there's a real need to make your own, but it is a fun project to do. So if you stuck with me to the end here, thank you for your time. I hope you learned something, and I hope you were entertained, and I'll see you on the next one.